Welcome to session 3 of Android Study Jam. In this session, we are going to learn about activities, their life cycles, even with fragments, their life cycles, and also we will get our hands dirty with navigation components. First, we will look at activity life cycles. So let me go to the official documentation. Here you can just try to see the Android lifecycle graph, and here you can see the whole lifecycle of an activity. It starts from onCreate and it ends on onDestroy. Between that, there is a lot of other functions that are very useful during each process in our application. Today we will also be implementing a similar application that will use all these functions to just show which function is used when. So to know that, let's jump into Android Studio. Create an empty activity. I will name it ASJ Lifecycle. Finish. Now our app is ready, and as you can see, by default the onCreate is always called. Here you can see the onCreate is already called. This is the same onCreate that is written over here. And today we will see how we can create the other functions too. So first, what I'll do is today I will also show you how to save the instance of a state. Because in Android, whenever we change the orientation of our phone, like if we rotate our phone or we restart the activity, then the data or the saved instances of our data, that can be lost. Because what Android does is, the moment we change let's say we change our orientation, it deletes all our configurations and recreates the activity. So to prevent that, we will see how to use saved instance state. So first I will go into my activity main.xml to design my layout, and in the I will not delete it, but I'll just edit it. I'll name it text view ID. I'll give it a text to 0. And I'll just make it large enough for you guys to see. Yeah. Now I'll also drag in 2 buttons. And I will select both of them and align them horizontally and vertically. I'll just drag them to the bottom. Yeah. Now I'll select the first button. I'll give it button ID of button neg. That's for negative. And I will change the text to let's say -1. Okay. Also for the second button, button POS, and +1. Yeah. And as you can see, now I'll just keep this activity layout this simple. And now I'll go into my main activity.KIIT and I'll just set these up. So I will need a button first. Sorry, for our integer value, I will create it a num equals to 0. And this has to be a variable. Next, I will initialize my text view, and that would be a late init type. Okay. In the onCreate, I will initialize all the instances of my design tab. So text view equals to find view by ID, r.id.textView, and for our buttons, I'll have to completely initialize it find user id. It is a button type dot id dot pos. Again, other button. Okay, now our view is set. Now what we can do is we will set our text view to display the num variable. So text view dot text equals to num dot toString. And now we will set on-click listeners to our two buttons. So on-click listener. Now I will, if the user presses on the btn POS, then I want the number value to increase by 1. So num plus plus, and then again set it. So text view dot text toString. That's it. And for the other button as well, this time it will be a -1. Okay, now our application should work, but just for instance, I'll show you. I'll run my emulator. Now as you can see, if I press on the +1, the value increases and decreases accordingly. But now I want to show you how we can see the life cycle of that activity. So to do that, first you have, now everything we have done here is inside the onCreate method. But now I'll also create the other functions. So let's see what the others are. First, there's the onCreate. It's already done. Second, it's the onStart. So to simply override these functions, we just have to start typing, and it will be always auto-completed. So onStart. And now to show that onStart is actually working, I'll simply just log it, and it is very easy to do. LGD, since I want it to appear on my debug tab. So that's it. It's already telling me that I'm inside onStart. And for the tag, I'll just simply assign some tab here, the tag value, that is activity. Okay, you can keep it anything, just for keeping the tag of what type of log this is. So onStart, similarly for the other functions as well. Next is the onResume. Then we have our onPause, onStop, onDestroy. Now you can see we have logged all our functions. Now if we run our application, we have to see it in our logcat. And if you want to properly see it, okay, let me first also put the log in my onCreate too. So log.t. Okay, and now I will run the application again, and this time I will just copy my tag and put it in my logcat search. I am searching for debug activity, and now as you can see, it will only show me the logcats for my activity tag. And now as you can see, whenever let me restart it. Whenever our application is first installed and started, onCreate and onStart are called. Now if I go back to the home screen, you can see the onPause and onStop are called. So this is how the activity lifecycle should work. So as you can see, onPause and then the onStop. But mind it, it is not yet destroyed. That means we can still go back to it, and it will restart and then again start. That is, from onStop, it goes to restart and again starts. and this time it does not create anything. It just restarts the activity, and it also doesn't. As you can see, the onResume function is not called, because the onResume function is always called because when we are working on the same application and we are going to another activity or a fragment, and so that this main activity goes to the backstack. Then if we come back to this activity, then it will perform as the onResume. Now if I want to close the application, I'll press the back button, and as you can see, it shows me on pause, on stop, and then on destroy. That means the application has stopped. The activity is closed. Okay, so now the lifecycle part is over. Now let us see what about the instance states, because now if I do something like +1, +2, anything, and if I now rotate my phone, that is I change the orientation, then you can see it again comes back to 0. That means my value is not saved. So to save the state of this value, we have to implement 2 more methods, that is the onSaved and the onRestoreSave. So let's do it. I'll do it after onCreate. As you can see, the onCreate already calls the onSaved instance states from the bundle class. So now we just need to implement it. So how that is very simple. OnSaved instance state. No, other one. Only the bundle one. Okay, here what I'll do is I'll save the num value that is present here. So for that we have to pair it with we have to make it a key value pair, so that the particular key will have a particular value, and it will be send it to our bundle using our out state. So out state dot put int out state dot put int. Now I have to pass my key and my value. So the key would be a string. I can either save this key, or for now I'll just directly initialize it here only, and the key would be save number, and I'll pass my num value. That's it. Now our save on whenever the onSaved instance is called, the bundle makes a call to this outstate.putInt and takes in my num variable. And to show you that this onSaved instance works before the destroying of this activity, I'll also log this activity, so log d onSaved instance, simple. And again, to restore the state before again restarting the configuration, to make the necessary changes, I'll have to restore my states. So to do that, on restore instance state, now I will have to use a temporary number variable equals to, and it will take in my saved instance state dot get int, and here I'll just pass my key value, that will be saved number. Now my temp num will have the value that was passed from my outstate bundle, and now I'll simply just set my text view to the temp num value. So text view dot text equals to temp num dot string, and now I'll also log this so that we can see it in our logcat. Now let's run the application again. Now as you can see, first the onCreate and onStart are called, and then if I press +1, let's see for example, and then I rotate my device, then onSaved instance state is called before the then onPause is called, then onStop is called, and before it is destroyed, my saved instance state is automatically called. That means before the destruction of this activity, my num value was already saved. And again, whenever the application started again, when after the configuration changed, then automatically the on restore instance state was called. And that is why now this time my variable 2 is still showing up. And okay, so there is a little bug here. The moment I press +1, it's again started showing me 1. That's because I did not update my num value. So to do that, here num equals to now you can see the app is running and we are getting our desired output. So this was what was all about an activity lifecycle. Now let's see about what we can do about fragments and their life cycles. So fragments are a little bit different from our activity, because fragments are first they are much more efficient and they are very flat, so that, and it is always recommended to use more number of fragments than activities. So in our fragment, the main thing is that first in a single activity we can have multiple fragments, and the fragment life cycle, even if it ends always inside our main inside the current activity class in which it resides. So let us see that here in the fragment life cycle. As you can see, it also has the following life cycles. That is the on create view, and it has a ton more of life cycle methods than activity, and this whole method works inside our activity lifecycle, so that even if our fragment is destroyed, the activity is still intact, and that's why we can have multiple fragments in a single activity. And now let's create exactly this multiple activity thing in our application. So to do that, I'll just simply create a menu icon to go into another activity to show it. So for that, first I'll create a menu icon. So to do that, right click on my res, new, Android resource directory, menu, okay. Again right click on menu, new, menu resource file, and name it as menu main, okay. Now inside my menu main, what I'll do is I'll just add an item. Fragment. I will give it a title of to go to fragment activity, and make it show as action never, so that it will always show me its option in a drop down. And now this menu main is created. Now all I have to do is activate it. So before that, I'll first create my other activity. So to do that, right click on the com dot in the first option inside the Java folder, and new activity, and I'll need a empty activity, and I will name this as my fragment activity. I want to generate a layout file, yes, and finish. Now my second activity is created, and here I'll show you how we can use fragments. So to store fragments, we will use frame layouts, so that we can show different fragments inside that, and we will use 2 buttons to correspond to different fragments. So first I will just assign a frame layout here. Wrap content. I'll give it an ID of frame layout. Yeah. And then now I will close the tag. Now I'll have to constrain it. As you can see, it is showing an error because we have not constrained it yet. So to constraint it horizontally in parent. Also, I'll just use 2 buttons to depict our 2 fragments. And now I'll also just drag in 2 buttons to correspond to different fragments. I want them to appear at the bottom, and here I'll change them to btn1, and the text should be first fragment. This one to be btn2, this should be second fragment. Yeah, now the button is set, and now I'll simply just constrain my frame layout above any one of those buttons and constrain the top to the top of my parent, and I'll change the layout height to 0 dp, also the width to 0 dp, and I will give it a padding or maybe a margin, yeah, layout margin of 16 dp. Okay, now my frame layout is set and the 2 buttons are set too. Now inside this frame layout we will use our 2 fragments, and for that first we'll have to create our 2 fragments. So to create our 2 fragments, it's very easy. Again, as activity, right click on our package, new, this time we go to fragment and then blank fragment. I'll name it first fragment. Now as you can see, there's a lot of boilerplate code here which we actually do not need, so we can delete it. I'll only need the onCreateView function, and what it will do is it will simply inflate my layout, that is the r.layout.fragment first, which is also automatically generated the moment we created a fragment. And if you will see in our layout folder, we should have it here, first fragment.xml. Here we can just delete okay, let me just change the frame, from frame layout I'll make it let's say linear, it doesn't matter actually, and then I'll change this to first fragment appearance large, gravity center. Okay, it's the only gravity, yeah. Okay, now our first fragment view is set. Next, and for demonstration purposes, I will not be putting any buttons or views inside it. I'll just put a text view so that you can see that we are actually changing our fragments when you click on a button. So this is the first fragment, and similarly we'll have to create a second fragment too. So right click again on the package, new fragment, blank fragment, second fragment, finish. Again, we can delete these codes. We don't need it actually. Okay, and now for our layout, I'll go to fragment second.xml. Okay, let's obviously put a orientation vertical to both our layouts, and this time this will be my second fragment. Also appearance large, gravity center. Okay, now both our fragments designs are set, and we are not actually going to write any code. I'm just gonna show you how we can implement fragments. So now I'll go to my main activity.KIIT to actually write the menu functionality, so that on clicking on the menu icon we will jump to our fragment activity. So I'll do that here. On create options menu. Now menu inflator dot inflate art dot menu main. I'll pass my menu and return true. Okay, and now on selecting the menu icon, so for that on options item selected, here I'll use a when function, when item dot item id r dot id dot action fragment. Okay, when r dot id dot action fragment, and now and inside here I'll write the code to go to my fragment activity, and for that I'll use an intent. I'll have to pass first my context, that is this, and then the name of my second activity, that is the fragment activity, colon class.java. Okay, and now to also start the activity, I can simply write an also lambda function, and inside it start activity it is the object that our intent is passing here inside the also function. And now on clicking on the menu icon, then our second activity fragment should work. That is, now I can go to my fragment activity.kt file, and inside its on create I can already use my and now inside my fragment activity I can already use my fragment layouts to initialize them. So for that I'll first initialize the two fragments. So well, first fragment equals to first fragment, and this is for the second one. Okay, and now I'll just set the first current fragment to my first fragment, so that whenever the user clicks on the menu icon, the first fragment will always be seen first. So I'll just create a function set fragment, and I'll create the function, and inside my function I will pass my first fragment, and here I'll take in a fragment. Also, I'll simply return it using support fragment manager dot begin transaction dot apply, and inside that I'll just replace the layout of the frame layout inside with my first fragment layout. So r.id dot the frame layout with my first fragment. Yeah, and I'll commit it, and now the fragment will be set to my first fragment. Now I need to implement the button functionalities. So first I'll have to implement them. So it is a button. Yeah. Okay, and now I'll implement the on-click listeners to it. So btn1.set on-click listener, and inside it I'll simply set my fragment to with first fragment, and if the second button is clicked, set on place list to my second fragment. And now I can run my application. Now this implementation is done, and now we can see our menu icon, and if I click on it, I see my fragment activity. It will go to my fragment activity, and now as you can see, the first fragment is first showing. And if I click on the second fragment button, then the second fragment layout will show, and it is already working fine. So this is all about how fragments and activities work in Android. And next we are going to see how we can use navigation components to even simplify our coding and make it even easier for us to use fragments. And now we will see. Okay, now let's see how we can use navigation components to use fragments in a better way. So first, let's go to the documentation, and here you can see that navigation layout are actually very easy to create, and we have to first use some dependencies. Then we have to use something called as the navigation graph. This is going to be the most exciting part about this, and controlling everything, even the animations, will be very easy. And let's start it. Okay, let's do it. Okay, create a project, empty activity. Finish. Now my application is ready, and the first thing I need to do is let's create some fragments first. So I'll create 2 fragments. Again, new fragment, blank fragment. I'll name it as, again, first fragment. Finish. Okay, and now I'll change the design of it. I will remove this frame layout. I'll change it to linear layout and give it a orientation vertical. Okay, and I'll also give it a gravity center. I'll remove this text view and put a new text view. The width would be wrap content. I want the text to be first fragment. Okay, appearance large. I'll close that, and again, and inside our first fragment this time I'll use a button. And this button will have wrap content, and I will give a bottom margin to my text view, let's say 32 dp. Yeah, and for my button I'll give it a text of go to second activity. Okay, and I'll also have to give it an ID of, let's say, BTN. Yeah, and now my layout is created. Yeah, that's all I wanted to show. And now I'll also create a second fragment, okay, using the same procedure. Blank fragment, second fragment, again remove the boilerplates. And inside this, I'll simply just change this to second fragment. Keeping gravity as center, appearance large. Okay. Now our layouts are set, and we also don't need to write anything inside the second fragment.kt or inside our main activity. And to use navigation, first we have to set some dependencies. So let's go back. So for those dependencies, I'll first have to go to my documentation again. I will copy this version first, then inside my module build.gradle file, inside the dependencies tab, and put in the nav version, and also I'll need the Kotlin implementations of it. So I'll only take the Kotlin implementation and paste them here. Also, before syncing, I'll also need to add my the plugin for it. So to do that, okay, let me just put the plugins later. I'll do them later. First, let me show you how to create a nav graph. That is the navigation graph, and as you can see, creating a navigation graph. So to create it, we have to go to a res folder, right? Okay, I added my navigation graph.xml file to my res folder, navigation folder, and now I can use it. So first, I'll click on this small icon, and here, as you can see, it is asking for my exact destinations. So first, I'll select my fragment first, of course, and next I'll select my fragment second. Okay. And now, as you can see, there is a little home icon at the top of my first fragment, which indicates that it will be shown first. However, we can change it according to our plan. And for the best part, that is if you want to navigate from this fragment to the second fragment, what we can do is just simply click on our first fragment, click on this blue button, and then drag towards the second fragment. And as you can see, an arrow that is also called as an action in this context has been added, and now it is already near. And if we click on it, if we highlight the action, it does already have an ID, and we can even use some animations to provide it like a sliding effect. And to do that, I have already copied some animation XML files, and you will find them in our GitHub page, and you can paste them directly in your res new Android resource directory, and it will be of type anim. Okay, and inside this I'll simply paste them, refactor. And now you can see I have my animation layouts, and we can just fill up this anim fields, and we will get our animation. It's that simple. So let me tell something about this enter animation. So what enter anim will do is it tells us how the second fragment, that is the destination fragment, should enter. So if I want the second fragment to slide in from the right side, so I'll just use my slide in right for the exit. And because something is entering from the right, then it also has the current fragment also has to exit from the left. So I'll use slide out left. Okay, and this pop enter anim and pop exit anim are basically used to depict the back button stages. That is what happens if the user presses the back button. So if we are on the second fragment and the user presses the back button, then the second fragment, that is the current fragment, should slide out to the right, and the new fragment should come in from the left. So to do that, first the pop enter nm, so that should be slide in left, and the pop exit nm, that is how the second fragment should go out, that should be slide out right. Okay, now our animation is set. That's it. Now let's see. The next thing we need to do is use a navigation editor. So now the thing is how we can save, where we can store these fragments so that they can appear. So to do this, we use something called as a fragment container view. Okay, so now I'll just simply copy this directly because I don't see why not, and I'll just use it here. So inside my activity main.xml, I will remove this hello world text view, and I'll simply paste the fragment container view that contains my name is navigation graph. Okay, and I'll also give it a margin of, let's say, 8, just for understanding. Okay, now you can see that this fragment container view should contain the fragments for our navigation graph, and I have given it a margin of 8 dp. Now some things are important here to see, like we have to give it an ID of navhost fragment, like we have to provide it an ID, and we always have to provide it the name as the androidx.navigation.fragment.navhost fragment, and also we also need to set the default navhost to true and set the nav graph, because one app can definitely have more than one navigation graph. So as our application is only one graph, that is the navigation graph. Okay, I think I have given it a wrong name. Yeah, it's navigation graph. Anyways, it's fine. So add navigation graph, and these 4 attributes always need to be there in our fragment container view for it to properly work, else it might crash. Okay, now let's see what are the next things that we need to do. Add the destination. We have already done all those things, because you can see if we again go to this nav graph, if we split it, we can see our code has already been set. The action, the animation item, the actions, everything has already been set, and we just need to implement these so that this button click will navigate us to our second fragment. So to do that, navigate to destination, and now you can see we use something called as a nav controller to navigate in our application, and in Kotlin we can do this by using any of these 3 following methods, that is the find nav controller, from fragment, from view, or the activity. And you can see the code is already here, so as how to navigate from one fragment to another as a navhost fragment. But we are not going to use this one, we are going to use a better way, and as you can see, ensure type safety by using safe arguments, and it is also recommended. So to do this, first we need to use its plugin. So to add safe arguments to a project, include the following class path in the top level build.driven file. So I'll just copy this dependency. Okay, I already have the nav version. I'll just copy this. I'll just copy this whole thing, my dependency, my version, and then I'll go into my project level build.gradle file here, and here I'll add those things. Okay. Also, to generate the Java code, we also have to use a plugin. To generate the Kotlin code for only Kotlin modules, add this plugin. So I'll just copy this thing right here, and we have to add it to your app's module level build.gradle. That is this one here. You can see plugins already. We already have 2 plugins. ID, and I'll paste the plugin that we just copied, and now I can sync it. Okay, now synchronization is done. Now I can close this Gradle files and I'll come back to my first fragment.kt, and here I'll implement the button. And but before that, it is always recommended that if you are using some architecture components, let me just to rebuild the project so that it will be better and everything will work as fine. Now my project is rebuilt, and now I can use the button inside my first fragment to go to my second fragment. So to do that, first I'll have to override my onViewCreated method. So inside onView, so if you again take a look at the activity fragment lifecycle, onCreateView is already implemented, that is this one. So you can see onCreateView is already implemented, and after that our onViewCreated method is called. So after implementing my layout for my first fragment, then only this onViewCreated method will be called, and inside this I will assign my buttons. So val button equals to, and now I cannot directly use find view by id and use it. I'll have to use it inside a view parameter. So view dot find view by id btn. Okay, was it btn? I don't actually remember. Let me say it. Yeah, it was btn. Okay, r.id.btn. Now I'll set its on-click listener. So before that, let me again show you the documentation as to how to use this save arguments method. So just take this example. If your destination is named as specify amount fragment, the generated class is named specify amount fragment directions. So see here on-click, after the on-click method, we have to use a value called as action, and here if our fragment name is specify amount fragment, then a specify amount fragment direction class is automatically invoked, and that has a function known as the action specify amount fragment to confirmation fragment. The confirmation fragment is nothing but our second fragment, and this whole action is nothing but the action created by our arrow mark that we had used to navigate from first fragment to second fragment. I'll make it clear in just a moment. So for this, btn dot set on click listener val action, okay, equals to, and now as our first fragment name was first fragment itself, so first fragment, and as you can see, the first fragment directions is already here. So I'll just simply click on it, dot, and as you can see, it is already suggesting me to use action first fragment to second fragment, and this action first fragment to second is nothing but the arrow mark id. Okay, as you can see, this arrow denotes my action. This arrow denotes my action, and it has an id of action first fragment to second fragment. And what I'll be using here is action first fragment to except the underscores. So I'll have to use it dot action first fragment to second fragment. Next, I'll have to use a find nav controller function dot navigate, and inside navigate I'll just pass my action that I just created, and that's it. That's all we need to use navigation to jump from one fragment to another. Let us run our application, and as you can see, the first fragment is showing, and if I click on this go to second activity, okay, it should be go to second fragment actually, but it's fine. Okay, let me just change it quickly. First it should be, yeah. Okay, now as you can see, this go to second fragment button is showing. If I click on it, I'll see a animation of sliding in and out effect, and now I'm in my second fragment. And if I click on the back button, I'll also go back with a sliding animation. And if you cannot find these animations, these will be right on our GitHub page in this application name, so you can check it out. It will also be in a link in the description. So this is how we actually use our navigation architecture component to navigate through our application using fragments or activities. And we can even easily animate our fragment, and we can even send data from one fragment to another, or from one activity to a fragment. And this is the end of session 4, and I hope you guys liked it. Thank you. And you will also learn more about architecture components in our next video.